Good morning. Here we are with another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. Sal, how are you doing today?
Doing wonderful, Ryan.
Great. Hey, we got Aaron Bledsoe in-house. Last time, I think you probably walked us 4 miles last time we had one
I
of
still
these.
have vertigo from going around the
Yeah.
facility.
Still got the highest step count of the week from your podcast. So, no, glad to have you back and in studio, and that must mean things are slowing down a little bit in your world. So,
it is. Yeah, we're starting to move more out than take in. So that's we've bridged that gap now.
Good.
Yep.
Good. And we're right before Thanksgiving in 2022, so that gives you a little idea. We've had a awfully nice harvest window for sure. So.
Very, very, very nice. Yep. Beans got dry in a real hurry with the way that we had this fall go.
Yeah, almost in days.
Oh yeah. Yep. They went from 15 to 8, and it was like, oh crap, what do we do now? Do we turn the irrigator back on to try to get them back to 10 or what?
Yeah, it's been a year. So, well, we're coming off another USDA report, and so I guess we'll start there. We've got several things we probably want to talk to you about at this point in time of the year, but let's start with that. What'd they tell us?
Yeah, so on November 9th, we got to see the production estimates, and we got to see yield estimates come back out. The yield on corn and beans came in higher than what they had said in the October report. And they were both higher than what the average estimates were. The average trade estimate was right at what the USDA said in October at 171.9, but it came in at 172.3. So, that's 0.4 of a bushel higher on the national yield average for corn. For beans, it was exactly the same, 0.4 of a bushel higher as well. It came in at 50.2. So they both came in a little higher, which means production came in a little higher than what USDA report said in October. Not a big change, but they were higher. Most estimates were at least, okay, well, we're going to keep what the October said or maybe a little lower, but they came in and shied us a little bit to the bottom side just because they came in higher.
That just seems remarkable to me with the friends and stuff that we have in the industry out in Nebraska and Kansas, and God bless them, they just burned up. Mm-hmm. And it just seems incredible that those numbers can still hold and even creep up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's I forgot the exact number, but I really wanted to dive into that the other day when I was looking at it. I was like, well, this is kind of odd seeing a bump in yield when we knew out west was really suffering. And if you look at Illinois, look at the increase in bushels on the yield side for Illinois for corn from last year. I think it was like 6 bushels higher. So if you're talking about Iowa being a little better and Illinois being a little better, those are the two states you do not want to be better if you want prices to go up.
Yeah, because everything's planted except parking lots and the roads.
Exactly.
It's planted to corn.
Yep. If you just cut Chicago and threw it into one of the Great Lakes, the entire state of Illinois would be a cornfield.
Well, do we want to spend some time on that topic? Or no.
Oh,
Too far?
Too far.
I'd say
that
no.
Was
but
rhetorical.
Right. Was it? Oh, but was it?
I don't know.
But yeah, when you see Illinois,
we love our listeners in Cook County.
Yeah,
I'm
right,
sure
exactly.
we got.
Yeah. If when you see Illinois take a big bump in the yield like that from the previous year, it'll put some pressure on the market. You really want if you're of the camp where you really want prices to go scorching through the roof and say that you've got the bushels and nobody else does, you don't want Iowa or Illinois to have a corn crop. Kansas can have a phenomenal corn crop. The Dakotas can have a phenomenal corn crop. And if Iowa and Illinois suck, the market will respond positively for the price. So.
Well,
beans, I don't feel like beans really shook anybody on this market. It was kind of, it came in a little higher, but you're talking 0.4 from October. It's not a bad crop. I kind of looked at the trend line yields, what the USDA was looking at, and the beans are right there at trend line. Trend line's roughly 51 bushels right now is what their trend line yield should have been for us. Corn was 177, so we're definitely below the corn yield trend line for corn, but still better than the 19 and 20 crop, if that puts it in perspective. And we remember how bad 19 was getting it into the field, and that's what we felt like.
Get it planted, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what it felt like was, oh my gosh, we're going to have wet bushels this fall because plants didn't get in the ground early, and we came out better at 19. And bushels were dry, surprisingly. I mean, we had a great fall for that. So.
Yep. Well, what do you think? I know you brought some information in there with you in addition to this, the USDA report. And one of the interesting things right before we sat down, you just kind of mentioned that you kind of look back in time a little bit and just kind of saw, what does it look like? I know past results doesn't predict future outcomes, but what do we look like compared to back a few years, maybe a decade?
Yeah, so I looked at the ending stocks to use rates and the average farm price, historical data. And I think one of the interesting things that initially popped out to me was that it shouldn't be a shocker to most people is that corn is used domestically. I mean, we use the vast majority of what we produce. We don't export. Exports account for a small portion versus the total production, except for back in 21 when we shipped all those bushels over to China. That was an anomaly. I mean, we exported more than we usually used to, so we saw the markets react very, very favorably in that. Now, beans,
I'll stop you just for a second. Corn's feed and fuel. Right?
Yeah, feed and fuel.
Feed and fuel.
Yep. U.S. grown, U.S. used. That's what it really is. And we don't import too much either. So we just basically raise what we need, and we usually have a little bit of a buffer to accommodate for those shorter years. Beans, on the other hand, it's a move it across the seas type crop. If we don't move it, then we have to use it domestically, and we don't have the domestic use rate high enough yet to chew through what we produce. Now, there's a lot of things coming in the pipeline that everybody's real excited to talk about, soy biodiesel and all that. And if all of those plants that everyone's talking about come online, we will be a net importer of beans, but we're not there yet. So right now, and we won't be there for another 5 years or so, at least, before plants even come to even 90% completion, and then we still have a waiting period to get them online and running. So it'll be a really long time for beans to get to that point where we use pretty much everything that we grow, like corn. But with that said, what do you guys want to start with, corn or beans?
I'd say just before we start with corn, and the soybeans are a global commodity because that's actually food, right? I mean, that's a protein source around the world.
Yep.
So also feed, but mostly until biodiesel catches on to the level that ethanol has. That's why that one moves around the world. Before we leave this and go into corn, what about the Ukraine? Or should we hold that one? Let's start corn first and then talk about.
Yeah, we'll hold that for
okay, let's
later.
hold that one for later.
Because that's really, I think, not to shock anybody, that's really kind of something that's in the background. Because if you look at these average, start with corn, what they're predicting right now is a world stocks to use rate for corn somewhere around that 22.5%, and the U.S. stocks to use rate somewhere around that 8 to 9%. And I've been on here before, and I said, look, when you get the corn stocks to use rate below 10% for U.S. domestically, the market gets a little uncomfortable, and that's when you start to see volatility. That's when you start to see prices increase a little more than what we're typically used to. Is the market's trying to incentivize plant more corn, and we're willing to pay you to plant more corn. So with those stocks to use rate, our average farm price is $6.80 for the U.S. So to put that $6.80 in perspective, we're talking 2012 average farm price. That was $6.89.
Wow.
And that stocks to use rate for the U.S. was around 7%. But the world stocks to use rate was just under 15%.
Wow. Okay.
So we're 7%. We have 7% more stocks to use in the world right now, and yet we are within 9 cents of the 2012 average farm price.
I'm a slow kid from Washington County. Tell me what that means.
So that brings in the Ukraine deal. All bets are hedged on the fact that if you can't get wheat from Ukraine or Russia, you're going to have to go with some other form of that product. which steps in corn. So you're banking on the fact that we're going to use more corn or export it to places that typically don't use it because they can't get their normal crop from where they usually get it.
Okay.
So there's a lot of risk priced into this price right now. So I am not a doom guy on this corn because I do think with everything going, we do have a smaller yield than we're used to the last couple of years, or at least versus last year. Out west is very, very dry. Basis levels out there are just saying we don't have corn. We will pay you whatever we have to pay you to feed our cows out there. So the corn's going to go to where the corn isn't, and that's going to be out west, and that's going to be the east. Your big feeders, your chicken and turkey and poultry, all that is on the East Coast. Out west is all the cattle lots. They're going to pull these bushels from the Midwest to get them to where they need to be. So I'm not doom and gloom on corn, but it is a big watch out on we need to be particularly careful with this corn.
Sounds like it's got a little room to move down.
It does have some room to move down. And when we get to these levels, when we start talking about $6, $7, $8 corn, you really start tiptoeing into those areas where there's more pressure to the downside than to the upside. I mean, historically, you are so far out of the ball game. If you think of a bell curve, you've always got that bell curve right in the center. That is like your average sweet spot. When you start tiptoeing on the extremes, the statistics say you're going to come back into that middle of that bell curve at some point. And at some point, this thing will correct itself. I don't know when. Nobody really does. I mean, you've got the black swan event of Russia and Ukraine. You've got freight that's still crazy. Barge freight has luckily came back in our favor now. It's dropped there in October. It was nasty. I mean, it was really bad on the river. But you've got a lot of things that I think I wouldn't be as nervous about the corn just yet. But everybody needs to be very, very careful with this one. Because in the 13 crop, that average price went down to $4.46 with just under a 20% U.S. world stocks to use rate.
Okay. Well, what do you think about beans?
Beans, I've been nervous all along on beans just because we have proven that if the world needs beans, buddy, we can get the world beans. Whether that's South America or whether that's U.S., we can get the world some beans, and we can do it real quickly. Think about back in 2018, there were the tariff wars and all that going on, but buddy, we can raise a bean crop real quick. And because it's not just us, U.S. wide, corn is we're still king here in the world, but beans, we're no longer king anymore. So if South America wants to raise a big bean crop and they get the weather to do it, and we raise a mediocre or above average crop, we're going to be in trouble. So with that same idea, U.S. ending stocks to use and world ending stocks to use, anytime we get below 5% on domestic or U.S. stocks to use rate, we get uncomfortable. And right now we're somewhere around that, a little over 4% stocks to use. Globally, we're somewhere around that 18%, close to 18%. As a reference point, I say 12, and I don't bring up 12
Explain
because
why 12.
Yeah,
some of our
listeners won't know that.
Okay, so in 12, what you had was a big drought. You had a big supply issue, and that just drove prices sky high because the U.S. at that time was still the leader in the world for corn and beans. We were it. If we had a bad crop, the world felt it. If we had a good crop, the world got cheaper prices. That's how it worked back then. 12 was a really, really bad drought for us. I am not comparing this year to 12 because of our weather. Not at all. Now, out west, they felt like it because they burn up. But the only reason I'm bringing it up is because in 12, that was the last time that we really got to these historic average farm prices that we're seeing right now. This past summer we saw really high prices, but I'm talking U.S. average farm price. So in 12, the U.S. average farm price was $14.40. We're at $14 right now. But in 12, we had tighter U.S. We had roughly the same U.S. stocks to use rate. our world stocks to use rate, was 3% less, 2 to 3% less.
So it was 14 to 15.
Yeah. So yeah, it was somewhere around. Right now they're projecting us to be around 18%. So I guess really it's only about 2%. In 12 it was about 16-17%. So, but the only reason I bring that up and I bring 12 up is because that's the last time that U.S. average farm price was that high. And so it's just a little concerning that we're that high. So to say that, well, I think prices are going to go up. Well, you got to remember why the prices went as high as they did in 12. 12 was a supply issue. Right now, we're hoping that demand keeps it there. We've been piggybacking off of South America and having some mediocre crops. If they have a good crop or average or above average, we're going to see pressure on this price. And we're talking logistical issues. I mean, all we have to do is get dry in the summer again. And we're going to be relying all on the bean mill crush market because we won't be able to ship it out of the river. I mean, we saw what happened to prices in October, and the futures may have gained 40 cents, but we lost 80 cents on the basis.
Because the river was low and we couldn't move it.
The river was low. We couldn't move them.
Nobody's moving.
Yep. And as a farmer, I hope everyone understands is that price is what you need to be concerned about. Don't concern yourself about basis or futures. Ask price. The only time you can really talk about futures or basis is if you are somehow hedging that. So talk about futures if you want to do like a hedge to arrive. You want to lock in the futures because you think basis will get better. That's fine. Talk about futures then. If you want to talk about basis contracts, talk basis. But you have to, at the end of the day, remind yourself it's all about price to me. Not to the elevator. I don't care about price. I got a whole I got a whole different mindset. I am very successful when the farmer is very successful. So if I can get the best price for my farmer or my customer, I have a better chance of being successful myself. This is not the farmer loses and the elevator wins. This is I win when they win. So we are very much in tandem with this thing. So, but yeah, the soybeans, I would be a little bit more. I would have an itchy trigger finger.
So I have a demand question. Then how's the bird flu, Chinese hogs, all that kind of stuff? I mean, how's that playing in? This bird flu thing's pretty traumatic. It sounds like.
Yep. Yeah. So that'll affect your crush margins and stuff like that, which will put pressure on the bean market. Anytime that, we're dealing with really good demand right now. So anytime you put any pressure on that, when we don't have a supply issue, yes, we didn't raise the crop that we typically or thought we were going to, but we still raised a pretty good crop, in all honesty. So,
okay.
I guess one of the things you said, Aaron, that sticks in my mind about is one of the other podcasts. You said that we've never had in kind of the modern times, post World War II, a conflict, a war going on in a breadbasket country, and looking at those fields in the Ukraine and knowing that they are the Midwest of Europe, and when you see those fields on the news that are just pockmarked with artillery shells. And it's obvious that those fields they're trying to get ready to plant something. I just don't know how. I mean, I can't imagine the farmers how they're going to. I mean, we know what you got to do for leveling ground and trying to get ground in, but how do you go in and farm after? Let's hope that the war does get settled and resolved. But there's just going to be a long tail with that. I mean, I know we're not experts on geopolitical affairs in here, but isn't that going to impact future production coming out of Ukraine and Europe?
Oh yeah, you would definitely think it would, and that's where this market has so many asterisks to it. I mean, to talk about the fact that you've got the breadbasket nation of Europe in war, you got farmers that. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not going to plow a field if I think there's mines out there.
I don't think I would either.
Like, I love the world, and I love feeding people, and I want to help as many people as I can. I mean, that's what we're called to do as Christ followers, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to pull a metal vehicle across a field that's got landmines all over it. That does nobody any good at all. I mean, so you would think, yes, that production is going to be hit over there, which will create a long tail because all those nations that were going to them for their normal stuff, which sunflower oil is the main competitor for soybean oil. So if you can't get your sunflower oil, what are you going to try to get? Your soybean oil. Well, who has soybeans? The U.S. and South America. So where are you going to get your soybean oil from? Argentina or the U.S.?
Yep.
So there is going to be a very long tail. There is so many asterisks to this market. The West is dry, but the Midwest had a decent crop. Ukraine is bad. Brazil's going to start sending corn to China. That's new. That's not something that they've been doing for the last several years. They're trying to work through that to get that available to them. Chinese hog herd, avian flu, inflation. What is the consumer going to do? Because if you start knocking fuel usage, or if this administration keeps pushing us to the point where we can't afford fuel because they won't let us pump anything, fuel usage is going to go down. And by the way, what happens when fuel usage goes down? Ethanol usage goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So then your corn stocks grow. There's so many asterisks and so many pieces of this. This is one of those things where you have to make it simple as a farmer. And I kind of like how this is going, because I saw this the other day, and this is coming from White Commercial, who we hedge through. They're our brokers, but they help us be better elevators and be better service people for our farmers and for our customers and our members. And they send out this, they call it Profit Talk, but it's really more of a newsletter every several months. And it just says, like, we believe this. And in this kind of market with all these asterisks and all this craziness and black swan events and low rivers and just insane world right now that we live in, we have a simple, proactive, and disciplined approach to marketing beats all other methodologies in the long run.
That's a good way to sum that up.
And the other thing, and I've said it before, not as nicely as they have said it or as clean as they said it, but the market doesn't care about your cost of production. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. The market is not here to make you money. The market is here to make its own money and to move what it needs to move where it needs to go. So one of the other asterisks that we had for this past crop is astronomically high input prices that we're not usually used to. In 12, we didn't have input prices nearly as high as what we have now. So the margin of error is pretty small. We've talked about it before. It's a really high price to play the game. This is one of those things where the market's going to pay you what it wants from you, but it doesn't care what it costs you to put it in the ground. It doesn't care.
Yeah, and I tell you, that's one of the things that I think helps us and guides us and steers us in the right direction is just the agronomics of it. Mm-hmm. And we make a lot of inputs. We do a lot of tissue samples. We do a lot of soil samples. We make applications of fungicides or insecticides or different pesticides. We care for the crop because we know it's got a predictable outcome in yield or in quality or in or lowering risk. And so I think that's one of the things that definitely in U.S. production agriculture is that we do have an advantage on the global market.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, but before we started this, you were asking me about, well, do we talk about on-farm storage? And I think we do at this point because, I just sat here and said, if I had corn, I think there's still a little bit more room for corn to gain in some prices. Beans, I'd be very proactive on selling them. For beans, I'd sell them, one, because they generate a lot of cash. Interest rates are higher. Your operating loans are higher. They're taking more to cover that interest. Beans generate a lot of cash, and they make you money right now. You're not selling at unprofitable levels. Name of the game, sell for profit, and you'll never go broke. Like, you will keep doing what you're doing. So beans at these levels make you money. They service your loans or your operating expenses or your day-to-day stuff. They generate cash. Getting ready for prepay season, a lot of that stuff, guys are going to want to start locking in some prices and things. Beans give you that cash. Corn, because out west and vomitoxin is out east and all these weird things going on with corn right now, U.S. domestically, I think there's some ground for corn to go. Now, with on-farm storage, you have to logistically think about when you can move that out of your bin. You have to know that price. So I've had several people like, well, we think we're going to build some bins. I'm like, okay, bins are great. On-farm storage works. It does. Just don't build to where you can hold everything that you produce. Because what you're telling me is that I'm willing to risk everything on the fact that the market will pay me more later on. And we can talk about market structures on carry markets and inverted markets and what the market's trying to tell the farmer to do. And a carry market will tell you, hold on, I'll pay you more later on. And an inverted market will, I'll pay you more now and I'll penalize you later because you didn't give it to me when I wanted it. And all that is fine and dandy when you're hedging. But if you're not hedging, that price is all you care about, guys. So as a customer, as a farmer, remind yourself, keep it simple, because in these turbulent waters, simple will win out in the long run on this.
And say again your point. What is the point that you read? That's a good thing to wrap up and maybe finish on, is what you're saying there about managing and the good marketing practices.
Yeah. So I'll throw another one at you which I think narrows it down even more. Simple math is a more useful marketing tool than all the news and information in the world.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Know your costs, sell at a profit, keep moving through the day, and everyone's happy.
And it's another, to think about the beans now being able to, they're calling to sell them. It might prevent you from borrowing some pretty high price money.
Oh, absolutely.
That interest rates are the interest rates are crazy. So it'd be good to turn that into cash and pay as much as you can.
We haven't had to deal with interest rates in years.
Not like
and
this.
years.
Yeah, no way.
No, and we've got a really strong U.S. dollar right now. So there's so many canaries in the coal mine right now. Usually you can pin it down to like, okay, well, if this starts squeaking a little bit, we need to watch ourselves. There's so many birds flying around in this coal mine, it doesn't matter at this point. It's just figure out your number, get a hold of people, talk to your trusted advisors, figure out what you need to do to make it through this. Because this is a time when if you had a good crop, you can make some money, and you can make some good money. But you just have to be disciplined with it.
Yep.
Well, a nice shameless plug from us, too, as well, as our opportunity to not only talk about getting the advice to sell your grain and what levels to sell it at and that kind of advice, but also the fact that the agronomy group can come in and help you control that production cost as well. So when you've got an entire organization that works from that crop, from the seed furrow to the grain bins and to hopefully exporting worldwide or wherever, I think we make a strong case for not only being able to help market grain, but also to produce that crop in the first place. I think we can sell it as well as anybody.
Yep.
That's all I have.
Well, I know we're supposed to say, for some reason, like and subscribe. We don't know why, but that's important. We've been told to tell people to like and subscribe.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we want them to. We want you to do it on your own, but we're going to tell you. So, all right, that's all you have. Aaron, do you have anything else for us?
Nope. I just thank you guys for letting me come back, and glad to be back in here. And I apologize for anybody that got motion sickness on the last couple I've done. Tried to stay stationary, but we are almost in our new office, and our new big grain bin is done. We've got our 3/4 of the way full already in just a couple of weeks.
That's good.
Still waiting on the dryer, but all the progress is something to see down there. So don't hesitate to give me a call and stop by and check us out.
Maybe the viewers on YouTube like to see that panorama as you're going through and checking out the areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just because, I'm a gorgeous looking dude, and for all of you YouTube viewers out there, don't ruin it for the podcast people. Don't tell them no, just let them keep dreaming that I'm a good looking guy.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's it. So, all right, we'll leave it at that then. And that's another episode of The High Ground, powered by Premier Companies. Thanks.